If you know me, I'm a big Generation X lover. I love the music. I love even the style of it. I just love Generation X. It's something about its attitude I always found interesting. I mean, if you think about it, Generation X influenced a lot. But in a weird way, it was considered the outcast. So, I was thinking about my generation lately. And I was thinking in what would be Generation Z. And I was thinking, does it have any similarities to my generation and Generation X? Keep in mind, this is not a video trying to say Generation Z is the new Generation X. That's not even a fair comparison to make. This video, if anything, is coming from the place of curiosity and interest. Let's look at Generation X. Generation X would be born anywhere to 1963 to 1980. That's kind of like what most people see as the close off line. Now, there's a lot of talk about Generation X. It was pretty much the first, not technically the first, but it was the biggest generation for abortion rates. Meaning, parents aborted a lot. This was the first generation kids had pretty much not parents at the time. Where, yeah, they would have parents, technically, and not just aborts, but a lot of the parents had to work. So, they would become latchkey kids. Yeah, this was pretty much the first generation of latchkey kids. They were raised by the television. They ate a lot of weird food. You know, they ate a lot of canned food, and, think about it this way. If our generation, what would be Gen Z and the millennials would be, we growing up with gluten-free this or free whatever, Generation X had none of that. They get what they got, pretty much. That's pretty much where a bunch of TV dinners came popular, and it was pretty much that. They stayed inside a lot. Which, can I rant a little bit? Most Generation Xers know how to deal with this virus we're having in right now, because they already did it. They already stayed inside. They did it. So I'm not saying they were the only ones who can do that. I'm just saying, if they say there's a scary virus out there, don't go outside, they're going to be like, okay, I'll just watch some TV, eat some canned goods. That's pretty much what happened. Eat some cereal. That's pretty much what they did. And, I feel like, what does this have to do with my generation? I see a link. I do kind of see a link with this. Yeah, we may not be raised up of the television like Generation X was, but you know what we were raised up on? Electronics. Pretty much this thing right here. What we're watching right now. I was saying Generation X was labeled as cynical. So is Generation Z. We're cynical. We are super cynical. A lot of people don't want to admit that about us, but we are. We are. Generation X, okay, let's even go even further. Generation X to their parents would be the baby boomers. All the baby boomers thought, Generation Xers were going to be like the next generation, what we're going to fix things. But the job market was very bad back in the 80s and 90s. Right? So they labeled them as slackers. What's the difference between that and calling my generation lazy and no good? And remember when a whole craze when people like Paul Joseph Watson and others called Generation Z like gonna be the biggest assertive generation since World War II? No. I mean, a lot of us are still pretty livable, and we pretty much, yeah, we're not the savior what they thought we're gonna be. I think we're still gonna save the world, but not in the same way they think or thought. Anyway, now we're being called lazy again. Oh, what else? Oh, what else is another similarity between us and Generation X? Okay, let's talk politics for a second, since I brought up politics. Like I said, job market for Generation X, bad. Just, you couldn't find a job, really. Same thing with us, technically. I mean, especially with this coronavirus going around, it's hard to find a freaking job. It's really hard. And don't get me started on the bite of this country and everything. I'm not trying to say we are Generation X, we coordinate it or anything. I'm just saying there's winks, interesting winks. And you can go even as far as, like, say, the greatest generation became the baby boomers and all that stuff, and they were kind of similar in a way. We Gen Zers are the most similar of Generation X. That's why I think Generation Xers understand Gen Zers, kinda. Yeah, we may have some different thoughts on the world and all that stuff, but for the most part, we're pretty much kind of similar. And let's talk about music. Now, I don't listen to too much modern day music. I'm going to say it right now, unless if it's underground or something. But the fact 20-somethings like myself are getting into like Nirvana and all those things, it says a lot. It says a lot. Now, you could argue that's nothing new, seeing even Generation X got into the Beatles and stuff like that. Which, yeah. But you gotta understand, though, with Kurt Cobain, and grunge music goes even farther in the genre itself. Rappers these days, are like quoting Kurt Cobain. They're like saying Kurt Cobain is their influences and all that stuff. Why? Because Kurt Cobain and Generation X are the only music and generation under 20, 40 something odd years what has a grip on culture still. A lot of people hated this album. I personally loved it. There's a Kid Cudi album called Speeding Bullet to Heaven. I would advise you to look it up. A lot of people, it's not everybody's cup of tea, but I appreciate it. Is it the best album? No, but I appreciate it for what it was trying to do and what Kid Cudi was saying. By the way, Kid Cudi is my favorite modern day rapper. What he was saying. And that says a lot because I don't listen to too much rap, but I like some. But anyway, but what he was saying though is basically he was trying to show people music is music, either what. And the fact how can I put this in words? The fact he borrowed a lot of that stuff just shows, oh my god, Generation X and Gen Z really ain't all that different if you put it in mind. If you put it in mind. I mean, it's crazy, isn't it? It is crazy to think how much of a lasting impact Generation X had. You know, when I first got into Generation X culture, I guess you can call it retro now, I don't know. But when I first got into it, I thought, man, this is so cool. Why did this ever end? And I just figured out it never ends. Culture never ends, really. It rebobs. I think in a couple decades, kind of like how we saw it with swing music back in the 90s, we're going to get somewhat of a grunge revival. Or we're going to see alternative rock with grunge influences and all that stuff. I see it now. Heck, I see it now. You know, it's crazy to me. It's absolutely crazy to me I was obsessed with this stuff, still am. I'm 21 now, I'm almost 22. To think, wow, I'm not the only one alone on this. So tell me, again, I'm not trying to say Generation Z is the new Generation X. I'm trying to say basically the similarities and why we may actually, even though Generation Z tries to be different in most generations, we may have more in common to Generation X in what we think.